The story begins with a child named Charles, who was panicked about his dad's behavior because he was digging a grave with a lot of passion. His condition was such that it was as if someone had possessed him. Now he runs towards Charles' room, where his wife was stopping him from doing anything bad to Charles, but he hits his wife, moves her away, and goes into Charles' room. He attacks something on Charles' head and injures him. Then he drags him to the grave that he has dug. Before he buries Charles alive, Charles' mom comes from behind, shoots him, and ends him. After 30 years of his death, we see Charles again, who is a sailor on a ship. He lives with his family on his ship, and we discovers that his wife is very sick. She tells Charles that our children need a home. We should shift somewhere. A few days later, she dies, and then Charles comes to a big house of his cousin with his daughters. Charles' cousin was dead, and the strange thing was that the people of the area were very worried about Charles coming to this area, and the reason was his family history. His whole family had a phobia of worms, in which they felt that they were being eaten by worms. The problem was not just that. The people who worked in his family also died of a strange kind of allergy. This allergy was also spread to other people in the area, and this was the reason why the people of this area were happy about Charles' cousin's death. And when they found out that another person in their family, Charles, was alive, the people of the area were again in fear. It is shown that every night Charles feels that the worms around him are eating him, and at night he also hears the sound of rats running. He also calls some experts to catch them, but there were no rats in his house. It was clear that Charles also had a worm phobia like his family. The next day, he takes his children to the town where no one comes to him. Here they see a girl who was very sick, and the townspeople were telling Charles' family the reason for his illness. The next day, a housemaid comes to his house. Surprisingly, when no one wanted to come to his house, no one wanted to see him, someone came to Charles' house. Actually, she was a writer. She had heard a lot of stories about Chapelwaite, Charles' house and Charles' family, and now she wanted to stay inside and find out the truth of those stories and write her own story. After a few days, Charles takes his daughters to the church. Here too, no one lets them enter the church. Even all the townspeople together incite a man against Charles, whose daughter was sick, and Charles' family was blamed for this. He gets trapped in all this and decides to burn Charles' house at night for making his daughter sick. He throws petrol around the house, and when he was about to set the house on fire, suddenly someone comes from behind and stops him from setting it on fire and spills his own petrol on him and burns him to death. The scene cuts, and we are shown a girl who had an abnormal child. The child had no hands or feet. Anyway, Charles has come to a doctor with his daughter because his daughter can't walk properly. Her illness was not treated by any doctor here, and because of this weakness, she did not meet anyone. Charles has taken his children to school. In school, the teacher admits his children, but it is shown that the school children are not behaving well with Charles' children. These things also disturb Charles. He wanted a solution to these things. That's why he goes to the city minister and says, "I know that my family's reputation is very bad. Everyone is afraid of our family, and I want to clear their misunderstandings. Give me a chance. I have very good business ideas and money. We can do such a business in the city that people get jobs and people benefit." The minister says to him in response, "Okay, no problem. I'll have a meeting with your city people. In this meeting, no one pays much attention to Charles' words. He now comes home where at night, the same sick girl for whom's sickness Charles' family was blamed comes to his house. She was saying one word again and again, "Can you help me?" Charles did not understand anything. Charles' maid drops the girl to her house. Her condition was so bad that she was about to die, and before dying, she tells her family that Stephen Boone, Charles' cousin, is still alive. Saying this, she dies and her family comes out and makes noise that Stephen Boone is still alive and he killed his daughter. In this anger, everyone comes and starts attacking Charles' house. Charles also did not understand what was happening. He runs away from here and digs his cousin's grave, and he is shocked to see that Stephen Boone, his cousin, was not there. In the next scene, it is shown that Charles was killing his children and throwing them in the grave. Just like at the beginning of the story, Charles' dad was going to bury him alive. He gets up being scared. It is found that all this is his dream and he is still in his cousin's grave. Charles now goes to his cousin's old maid's house to find out the truth, whether his cousin was really dead or not. Then the maid tells that Stephen Boone means Charles' cousin, died in front of her eyes. The reason was that his daughter had fallen down the stairs and died, and Stephen could not bear this grief. After that, Stephen's dad, that is, Charles' uncle, also jumped into the sea and died. If this whole story was true, then where did Stephen's body go? As Charles asks this question, that woman gets scared and tells him to leave her house. On the other hand, the minister is shown who is sitting on his children's grave. At this time, his wife's dad comes and starts inciting him against Charles because he also felt that the Boone family was behind the murder of the minister's children. He tells the minister that you have the power. You can get him out of this city, but the minister was a good man. He did not want to get anyone out of his house for no reason. Here at night, some masked people attacked Charles' house. They were throwing stones at Charles' house. After this attack, Charles saves his children, but he was injured. The attackers' voices resembled those of his factory's employees. That's why he goes to his factory the next day and threatens all the employees, "Stay away from my family here, otherwise it will be bad for them." Here, Charles' son, who was playing in his warehouse, a crazy girl eating an apple comes in front of him. She was telling him to look for a book again and again. He comes home and tells Charles that he met a girl who was telling him to look for a book. He shows Charles that this girl also gave him apples with worms. Charles remembers looking for a book for the girl. This girl also told Charles to look for a book. Surely, that book is special for his family, so maybe she is telling him to look for it. In the next scene, it is shown that Charles' son has found a tunnel in his warehouse. When Charles goes to check it, he is surprised to see that this tunnel goes to his house. There was a room. When he goes to the room, he sees that there were a lot of human bones lying there. Seeing this, he finds out that Stephen Boone, his cousin, has not really died yet. He used to live here, and every night when Charles felt that there were rats in his house, it was not the sound of rats, but the sound of Stephen walking. Charles thinks that because of Stephen, the townspeople are also afraid of him. So he decides that tonight he will stay in this tunnel and wait for Stephen to come, and by killing him, he will solve all his problems. During this time, He also sent his maid Rebecca to the police station to report to the police that Stephen is really alive. When Rebecca goes to the police station, the officer does not find her in the station. She now goes to the officer's house. There was a strange silence. She now goes to her room to check her wife and sees that there was a man standing behind that girl. As he sees Rebecca, he runs away from this house. Rebecca follows him, and when she sees, he finds out that this man is no one else but Stephen's father, about whom we found out that he jumped into the sea and gave his life. Stephen and Stephen's father are both alive and in this town. Charles, who was still waiting for Stephen in the tunnel. Stephen does not come to the tunnel today. He comes inside the house to Charles' daughter, who was always in a strange mood because of being disabled. Stephen starts manipulating her and says, "I can get you out of this disease for this. You just have to listen to me." Stephen's words were also heard by Charles in that room. He follows these voices and quickly comes in front of him and points a gun on him. Here he sees that Stephen's face does not look like a human at all. His eyes are out, and he also has two big vampire-like teeth. Before Charles shoots him, Stephen runs away through the window saying, "Find the book." Charles comes forward and shoots him, but he sees that he did not suffer any harm from this bullet and falling from the window. He was running away from here like a normal person, and if he is alive after all these fatal accidents, it means that he is no longer human. Immediately after this incident, the Sam girl comes to Charles' house, who told her son to find the book by giving him an apple. There were some people like her with her, and she tells Charles that the Lord of Jerusalem is calling you. Saying this, a girl standing next to this girl sacrifices her life in front of Charles' eyes. Seeing this, Charles gets very disturbed. The scene now cuts, and we are shown a scene from the past where we are getting to see Charles' grandfather. He has a book in his hand, and the book has possessed him completely. Because of this, his nose was bleeding from his mouth, and standing here, he had killed two people. His wife brings the police here to stop this bloodshed and kills her husband. This is the Sam book that everyone is telling Charles to find. Well, it is shown in the next scene that Charles had left his children at Rebecca's house, and he leaves for Jerusalem with a man where a lord named Jacob had called him. After going to Jerusalem, Charles sees that there are many followers of Jacob who are all doing crazy things. After that, the girl who had brought the message of Jacob to him takes him to Jacob. This place where Jacob lived was really scary. There was darkness everywhere, a dim light, and two injured people lying on the side. The blood coming out of their bodies was being collected. Moving ahead, finally, Charles sees Jacob, who was not a human but a vampire. He tells Charles about his family history and says, "You guys never had a phobia of worms." Jacob says Charles' grandfather wrote his name on a book called the Book of Worms. This book was not an ordinary book. This book was a key to reach the God of the dark world. Actually, Jacob wanted to find this book and drown the world in darkness because vampires live in darkness. But then this book was lost by the Boone family. Jacob says, "Because your grandfather wrote his name on that book, that's why that book calls the people of your family. I made your cousin and your uncle vampires after death to get that book so that they can find this book, but that book does not talk to the dead. That's why I put Stephen's property in your name so that you can come here, Find that book and give it to me. Charles also refuses to find that book and to give it to Jacob because Jacob's intentions were not good. But when Jacob threatens to kill his family, so now Charles was melting a little. Jacob says, if you bring me that book without cheating, then I will remove all the curse from your family, because of which the people close to you fall ill, and you guys are a victim of a phobia of worms. Hearing this, Charles agreed to it even he didn't want to. Here it is shown that Charles' daughter runs away from Rebecca's house and comes to Chapelwaite, means Charles and Stephen's house, because Stephen, her uncle, had given her the greed to cure her illness. She was now ready to do anything at his behest, and Stephen now catches her, drinks her blood and kills her daughter. Here Charles, who is returning from Jerusalem to his city, sees his daughter's body lying on the road. Seeing this, he was completely broken. The scene is cut, and we are shown a scene from the past where Stephen's daughter is shown. It is known that Stephen's daughter died because of him and his father. Actually, when Jacob made them a vampire and sent them to find the book of worms at that time, Stephen's daughter had hidden this book somewhere, and now Stephen and his father had started torturing their own daughter so that he can tell about that book. Fearing both of them, she was walking around with a cross in the house, and suddenly, when she comes to the stairs, her foot slips. After which, she dies because of falling. The scene again shifts to the present, where Charles has brought his daughter's dead body home. Charles was saddened by his daughter's death, but then he takes his daughter's body to drown in the sea with courage. Here we also see Rebecca, who was responsible for taking care of Charles' daughter. She could not do this, and because of this, she was very embarrassed. She now apologizes to Charles and his children. In response, Charles tells Rebecca, "You don't have to apologize. I know Stephen killed my daughter. Actually, Stephen and Stephen's father have both become vampires, and this is Jacob's work." Knowing this, Rebecca was very shocked. It is said that the police officer had come to meet the old maid of Chapelwaite. He wanted to know the truth about Stephen's father, who drank the blood of the police officer's wife. This maid says, "I had known for a long time that Stephen and his father have both become vampires. I did not tell this to anyone out of fear. And if they have drunk your wife's blood, then she must have become a vampire too, and now she will drink others' blood and will make others vampire too." Hearing this, the police officer leaves from there being sad. It is shown that the mayor of the church has also come to meet a woman. This is the Sam girl who had the birth of an abnormal child at the beginning of the story. It is found that this child belongs to the mayor, and he is asking this woman to leave the city because there is going to be a big danger in the city, and he knows this. He had also received the news that Stephen and his father had become vampires. He tells this woman to leave safely. "I will come to you after a few days. People need me here." This girl also gets ready to leave the city, and it is shown on the way that Jacob's people snatched her child and killed this girl here. The scene cuts and Charles and his family is shown. Stephen and his uncle are both ready to fight the vampires, but surprisingly, Charles' own daughter comes here to save Stephen and his father. She died because Stephen bit her, and now she had become a vampire. Charles goes to Stephen and his uncle while following her, who was asking him to find that book, and after finding the book, "You give that book to us. If you give that book to us, we will save our whole family, but if you give that book to Jacob, he will kill you." In the next scene, we are shown that there is always a book and a grave in Charles' vision this grave used to come in his visions when he did not even come to this city. He goes and digs that grave while thinking about something, and finally, he finds that book there behind which Jacob and everyone were taught. As he picks up this book, Charles gets a vision in which he sees that the sun has also turned red with the whole sky, and the Sam Jacob was walking on the ruins of many people. Seeing this vision, Charles understood that if he gave this book to Jacob, he would end the whole world. He decides not to give this book to anyone, and as he is leaving this graveyard, his daughter, Stephen, and his dad come in front of him. They cannot enter the graveyard because there are many crosses inside. These vampires are afraid of them. Stephen tells Charles to give this book to us. If you leave this book somewhere else, it will be in my or Jacob's hands. Here Charles also knows that Stephen's intentions were no less than Jacob's. He also wanted to call the God of darkness here and rule this world. He also gives the greed of this government to Charles, but Charles was not a bad person. He now takes this book with him to the chapel. Here Jacob is shown, who has learned from his powers that Charles has found that book, with the help of which he will be able to call the God of darkness to this world. He now prepares his whole team here and says at night we will attack the chapel, i.e. Charles' house, and then we will fulfill all our desires with that book. Charles had come home and tells Rebecca that now that we have got this book, so many vampires can attack us at night. We have to somehow keep the children and this house safe, and at the same time, we cannot give this book to anyone. This book is a distraction. They together make a lot of crosses around their house so that the vampires do not come to their house in fear. Rebecca notices here that since that book is in Charles' hands, Charles' behavior is becoming very strange. She tells him to destroy this book. Charles likes this idea of hers, and when they burn this book, surprisingly, that book does not burn. Here we are shown a police officer who has been informed that there are a lot of vampires in Jerusalem with Jacob. The informant tells his companion that I know this, and those vampires have attacked my wife too and turned her into a vampire. He was talking about it. That's when a car comes into the city. This was the dead body of the mayor's girlfriend, seeing which the mayor goes to her and hugs her, and seeing all this, the mayor's wife's dad calls him bad because the mayor had betrayed his daughter. The scene cuts and we are shown on the other side that Stephen's dad and Charles' daughter were drinking blood of a man by catching him. Doing this, their old mare sees them, and before she reacts here, these vampires also catch her and attack her. Here Jacob and his team, who are moving forward to attack Chapel, also catch a man on the way, drink his blood and fulfill their hunger. These scenes again shift towards Charles' family, where Charles' condition has worsened due to that book. Seeing his condition, Rebecca decides to leave this house along with his kids so that his children will be safe, and when she goes to the basement to talk to Charles, she sees that Charles put a lot of traps there, and at the same time, the wife of the police inspector, who had become a vampire, was also tied. Rebecca somehow manages to relax him, and she takes the book and ties it to the inspector's wife. After all this, Charles became unconscious. When he wakes up, he finds out that both the police officer and the mayor had come to help him in Chapel. Here the police inspector goes to the basement and makes his wife drink his blood so that she can live, while the mayor is still in the trauma of his friend's death. During all this, we are shown that Stephen, his father, and Charles' daughter together attack Chapelwaite. The rope through which Charles' uncle was trying to enter the house, they pull the vampire inside the house through that rope. Charles attacks him with his axe and throws him out of Chapelwaite. After a while, the whole team of Jacob, many vampires, spread around Chapelwaite. Charles tells everyone in the house that he just wants to save Chapelwaite and that book. He does not want to fight Jacob or his companions. It is shown that those vampires were coming inside the house through the windows and doors, where they attack them with bullets on their heads and start killing them. Now this war was not so big that suddenly everyone notices that all the vampires are leaving this place. They go down to the basement and check where there were many vampires before. They see Charles' son sitting here. He tells Charles that his sister Lova had come here. She said that if I give her that book, she will save our whole family, so I gave her that book. Hearing this, Charles was very upset. He runs out of the house and sees that his vampire daughter has given that book to Jacob, because Jacob had also promised him that if she brings that book from her family and gives it to him, then he will leave his family and solve all their problems. But here Jacob had refused all his words. Hearing this girl gets angry. She angrily tells Jacob that my dad will definitely come to take this book because he is a good man. He will never want darkness to come in this world. Here Charles was completely broken in Chapelwaite, and here Rebecca gives him the idea that we should go and ask for help from the people of the town. We should make them believe that vampires are going to attack their area. For this purpose, they bring the wife of the police officer in front of everyone. As she is put in front of the sun, she burns her and dies, and everyone is very surprised to see this. After seeing all this, many people believed Charles' words, and they were now ready to support Charles, so that he could bring the book back from Jacob. It is shown that the mayor's wife ate poison along with poisoning her husband's mare, because of which they both die. Here the police officer who was supporting Charles was not ready to go to war. He was very broken because of his wife's death. It is shown that Jacob is doing his dark ritual to call the god of darkness to this world. He also turns a lot of people into vampires here. On the other hand, Charles makes his own team and goes to fight with Jacob. And in the city behind, he tells everyone to stay in the church, because he knew that Stephen, his cousin, would definitely come here to attack people. Here Charles and the people of the city had reached Jacob's church when suddenly the sun set, which clearly meant that Jacob's magic was working. Here many vampires also attack them. While fighting them, Charles discovers that they die if their heart is attacked. At the same place, Rebecca also sees her dad, and she is sorry to see that her dad always followed Jacob. Coming inside the church, Charles sees that his daughter was standing next to Jacob. He asks for help from his daughter, and before anything could happen here, Jacob's accomplice moves forward to attack Charles, but here Charles is saved by his daughter. As the opportunity comes, Charles attacks Jacob's neck. Here Jacob dies, but it is shown that Stephen has stolen the book during the whole fight. He now wants to call the god of darkness, but Charles reaches here on time. He hits him and takes his book back. The vampires were now dead. After that, he burns this church of Jerusalem and returns to his town. He had saved the world from a great devastation, but he could not save his family from the book's curse. Charles did not want his future children to suffer because of this book or this book called him to it. He gives Rebecca the responsibility of his kids and comes to his vampire daughter, asking her to drink his blood so that he can become a vampire. After doing this, he called a doctor to his house because he now wanted to keep that book in his body because he could not trust anyone about this book. He had now become the personal keeper of this book. After it, Charles digs his own grave and puts his name plate on it. Means Charles is now dead for humans. He had become a vampire. He now says goodbye to his family and goes into the sea from a boat. He had always been a sailor, and it was not difficult for him to live in the sea. The season ends here, showing him leaving.